Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. I hope you're doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. Okay, today in the Dungeon Dive, we are taking a look at Random Quest, Dungeon Delve. This is a game that was just shipped from Kickstarter, and I was a backer of Random Quest. Let's read a little bit about this game. Challenging, fun, and exciting, Random Quest is primarily a solo game full of rapid-fire dice, deadly foes, and treasure. You, as the game master and the player character, delve deeper into the many dungeons that dot the countryside near the good town of Riverwell. It is here that you equip your warrior, wizard, priest, or thief and set out to clear each of the dungeons in an attempt to gain wealth and experience points which allow you to become more powerful. Once you have cleared all of the basic, expert, and advanced level dungeons, you win the game. Your PC is bestowed with the title of Majestic Lord or Lady of Renown and is guaranteed a place of honor in the Grand Hall of Eminence. Take the first step on your quest and let the random fun begin. This game was designed by Brian Larch and it has art by Kirill Chengov. So, Random Quest, as the name suggests, is a random dungeon crawl game. And you are basically just creating a character and going into a random dungeon, fighting monsters, getting loot, rinse and repeat. Once you kill enough monsters or overcome enough traps or challenges, you have won that dungeon. You want to work your way up from 3 different levels of dungeons, and then once you have defeated enough of the more powerful dungeons, you win the game. So the game comes with, you will get your rule book here. You will get a deck of dungeon cards, and I think these dungeon cards are pretty cool. You can see some laid out here. This was my entrance card, and so far I've been going in that direction. But you will get a number of dungeon cards that you will be exploring. You will get a pretty large stack of monster cards. So the bestiary in Random Quest is quite extensive, and this is where a lot of the really good art is. I like this art a lot. You guys know that I like black and white art a lot. I know a lot of you guys like black and white art a lot. So it's really nice to see this kind of old school line drawing in this game. You will get a few dice. I am using my new kind of a Morkborg style D6 dice here because this game is all about rolling D6s. It's a D6 system. And then you will also get a player pawn to keep track of where your character is. You will get a character sheet. And so when you start the game, you want to create a character. And to do so, you roll up some various stats. You have 5 main stats: combat, agility, health, knowledge, and personality. You will roll 3d6 5 times, and then you can assign those totals to those 5 abilities. And then each one of those prime abilities has 2 sub abilities that are associated with it. And to derive your sub abilities, you can assign points that equal to your prime ability. So for instance, in combat, I have a 15, but I assigned 8 to melee attacks and a 7 to ranged attacks. And then depending on the value that you assign your sub ability score, you can also apply a modifier when you are taking challenges or when you are doing something that is applicable to that sub ability. For instance, let's say I was in combat and I was taking a melee attack. My melee score is 8, but because it's an 8, I have a +2, which is a 10. And to do anything, you basically take 2d6 and you want to roll your stat or under. So you're looking for low rolls to successfully overcome a challenge. So for me to hit something with melee, I would need a 10 or under. So pretty easy for me to hit something with melee. However, my dodge and acrobatics, those are only a 5 each, so that's pretty low. Or my personality score is a 3 and a 4, so that's really low. That is a very slim chance that I can overcome something with persuasion or with my acting ability, my ability to pretend in this game world. You will also get a items standard and magical little items pamphlet. This is really nice. Again, a really great piece of black and white art there. This on the top will give you a pretty good kind of basic rundown of the game, some of the major stat checks and challenges that you will have to overcome. And then when you go shopping in between dungeons, this chart here lists all of the things that you can buy and how much they cost. Now, one of the stats does help you sell and buy things for cheaper, and that is the acting stat. So if you roll your acting sub attribute or under, then things are cheaper. If you roll over, things are more expensive. So that is one thing to keep in mind when you are creating your character. When you create your character, there are a number of different classes, and those classes will have different prerequisites for their stats. For instance, my character here is Kraygor the Warrior, and to be a warrior, you needed a combat score of 12 or higher and a health of 9 or higher. And then each of the classes has a few special abilities. The wizards and priests, of course, can cast spells. The thieves have the most abilities to do because they can open locks and find traps and disarm traps, move silently, hide in shadows. So the thieves have a number of your basic kind of D&D, classic D&D thief stats. And then there's also an unclassed, and this is the class that you must choose if the requisites for any of the other classes are not met. So that's kind of like a waste of skin class, like from Bloodborne, or a what was the in Dark Souls? What was when you were a like a level 1 nobody? I can't remember what they were called. But so yeah, so that's the class. If you just roll really poorly, you have to be an unclassed. You are an apprentice. And so a game is pretty simple as far as the basic rules go. Now, one thing is this game does kind of straddle the line. It's kind of on the fence. It maybe has a little bit of an identity crisis. Is it a board/card game or is it a solo RPG? I'm not sure which side it falls on. Some of the rules make it sound more like a classic kind of a dungeon crawl board game or card game, but there are some ambiguities, and some of the ambiguities are baked in because right here it says that there will be times and situations during the game when there is no clear-cut rule to guide you. I think that happens more often than some board gamers may be comfortable with. And then when this happens, it is up to you and your imagination to decide how to adjudicate the situation. Remember to be fair, honest, and consistent with your rulings and decisions. So there are quite a few times where you will just need to make up a rule on the fly. Luckily, though, we have a pretty solid system, a roll under system, so you know what you need to do. And we have all of the stats that we would need to overcome things that aren't in the rules. So if you're familiar with RPGs and with solo RPGs, that shouldn't be a problem. If you're more familiar with playing tight mechanisms in a board game, you may run into some challenges adapting to Random Quest. I just wanted to mention that. But as I said before, I started over here. We'll go through a couple sample turns, and then I moved in this direction. I have fought some goblins. I found a key. I found a potion of invisibility. And right now I am having combat in this area of the dungeon here against a Quaggoth. And let's take a look at the monster cards. So the monsters will have a number of stats. They will have health. That is their attack value. So a monster will have to roll under their attack value to hit. That is their dodge value. They will have to meet or roll under that to dodge from being hit. That is the resist value. That's how good they are at resisting magical attacks. And then on the bottom of the card, it will tell you what kind of attack they do. The goblins, there was a chance that the goblins would do a ranged attack. Anytime a monster has a ranged and a melee attack, there's a 50-50 chance that it'll use its ranged attack. But so this Quaggoth here, it does 2 attacks with its claws for 1d3 damage each. It also has this special ability here for when they reach 3 or fewer health. The Quaggoth enters a Berserk Fury, which gives it a third attack, and all damage is +1. And that rage lasts until death or the enemies are dead or out of sight. And then we get a little bit of lore that Quaggoths are 7+ feet tall humanoids with long, shaggy white hair covering their entire bodies. They are warlike, vicious, and aggressive. This little kind of cartoon bubble symbol here, that tells you if you are able to parlay with the monsters or not. So the goblins, if you are good at acting, if you're good at personality and persuasion, you can maybe convince them to join you or to leave you alone. These Quaggoths, they're more beast-like, so they don't have a language capability. That is kind of a cool little thing that you can do in this game. Finally, here on the enemy cards, you will have the number that you are facing off against depending on the level of the dungeon. We are at level 1 right now. I'm at a basic dungeon, and so I am facing off against 2 Quaggoths. And I have written those on my tracking sheet here. I am fighting 2 Quaggoths, and each one of those has 12 HP. Now, when you go into combat, the first thing you're going to do is roll up on this monster reaction chart to see what the monster is going to do on this round of combat. So let's roll our yellow dice here. We have a 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So they will attack. Okay, so this is just a basic attack. Now we will roll for initiative. We'll say that the pink is my hero is Kragor. So a 4 and a 3. So I get to attack first. Okay, so I'm going to do a melee attack. There are a few different things that you can do in combat. You can hold your action until the monster attacks, and then you can react to it. You can take cover, in which case you lose the attack for that round, but you get a +2 to your dodging, and you get a +1 to your range for the next attack. You can parlay, and that's where you take an acting check, and then you can talk to the monster to try to convince it to do things, maybe to join you, or you can intimidate it to run away. You can retreat. If you retreat, there is a chance that the monsters will follow you. You can flee, in which case there's a chance that the monsters won't follow you, but you might drop some items, or you can attack. So I think we are just going to attack for the sake of this example here. So I will attack with my long sword. My melee score is 8 + 2, so that's a 10. So I need to roll a 10 or under to hit one of the Quaggoths with my long sword. And I rolled a 3, so that is a hit. I don't believe there are any critical hits or critical misses in this game, at least not that I have discovered so far. So that is a successful hit. And my long sword does 1d6 + 2 damage because I get a +1 melee damage for being a warrior, plus my long sword automatically does +1. So I do 3, 4, 5 points of damage to the Quaggoth. However, every actor, every creature, every character in this game has a chance of dodging. And so if the Quaggoth rolls a 7 or under, he has successfully dodged that attack, and then that will only take half damage. And no, so they would take full damage. And what did I say? I can't remember what I said. 5 damage, I think. So we would take off 5 and go down to 7 health for that Quaggoth. Now, I believe that both of them now get to attack me. I don't think it's one-on-one. I think that this is a little bit of the ambiguous rules. I think that all of them attack me now. And so each one will get 2 attacks, and they hit on a 5 or under. And so let's do the first Quaggoth. We'll get 2 attacks. He misses. The second Quaggoth will get 2 attacks, 5 or under. He hits for 1 and misses the other. So he will hit me for 1. Now I can see if I can dodge that. My dodging score is a 5, but I do have a shield, which gives me a +1. So for a 6 or under, I can dodge that attack. No, I barely missed dodging it, but that's okay. So now I will take that 1d3 points of damage, and I will take 2 points of damage, bringing me down to a total of 8 hit points. Then you would repeat that over and over again until one side has been defeated. Let's say, for the sake of this example, that we have defeated the Quaggoth. Now, when you go into a dungeon, the first thing you do is you roll a d6 and you add 2. And that's how many monsters you have to defeat, how many monster cards you have to defeat in order to win that dungeon. You can also play an alternate rule where you can count up to 3 successfully avoided traps or challenges, also count for 1 against completing that dungeon. And I am playing with that rule, and I have successfully also overcome a poison gas. I was able to resist that. But now let's go into the exploration phase. Let's say combat is over. So you will pick a route to go. And this is maybe where a little bit of that ambiguity lies in this game. As you can see on this card here and this dungeon card here, there are some gaps in the floor. Okay, so how do you want to handle those? There aren't really rules about how you handle things like that, how you interact with the things on the map cards. That's kind of up to you when you are playing the role of the GM in this game. You could say that you have to pass an acrobatics check. You have to jump across the chasm. You have to maybe swing across it if you have a rope. It's kind of up to you to come up with those kinds of things and how you will interact with the various elements on the map spaces. But for the sake of this example, I will just explore over here. So I will draw the next dungeon card. And we have some corridors here. So we just have to line up the art there. You don't have to line up the card. And we move into the next room. And then we roll 3d6 and check our contents of the dungeon card to see what we have discovered. So let's roll our 3 yellow d6 here. So we have a 6, a 7. Okay, we have a treasure chest. Okay, so we find a treasure chest. Now, the chests have a chance of being locked or trapped, or locked and trapped, I should say. So if you roll 2d6 and it's a 7 or under, it is locked. And it is locked. And is it also trapped? On a 4 or under, it's trapped as well. No. Okay, so it's only locked. Now, the thieves have a better chance of picking the locks. However, I recently found a key. So I will just cross off my key in order to open that treasure chest. And then we can come here and roll 3d6 to see what we find in this treasure here. 12, 16. We find arrows, 1 arrow, arrows plus 1, 2d6 of those. Okay, very cool. So we find 7 arrows that are plus 1 damage. So I do have a long bow with 12 arrows, but now I have 7 arrows that are plus 1 damage. So those are kind of like magical arrows that I can use if I want to take ranged combat. And that's kind of how the game is played. You go from one room to the other, rolling up on this contents of the dungeon. And then depending on what you find, you might find treasure, you might find some traps, you might find some monsters or some challenges. We have 2 special cards here that will have random magic for divine magic and arcane magic. And you will basically just be fighting a whole bunch of monsters, trying to overcome traps and challenges, trying to do that a certain number of times. And then you are teleported out of the dungeon back to Riverwell, where you can heal up and you can sell your loot and buy more equipment and level up your character. So overall, I think this game is okay. There are some pluses and some minuses. Let's talk about the pluses of Random Quest first. Okay, first of all, this game is the perfect example of how Kickstarter should be used, in my opinion. This is just one guy and an artist just making a game that they wanted to make. They're not a big company. They're not using Kickstarter as a huge kind of a marketing push or as a pre-order scheme, as a way to actually fund the last game that they made with funding for a new game, this kind of perpetual cycle. It's just a guy making a game that he wanted to make. And so even though I don't love the game, I am super happy that I was a backer and that I helped somebody make this project, make their kind of like dream project. I think that is super cool. And one of the best things about this Kickstarter experience is that this game actually shipped early. It was supposed to ship, the target shipping date was October of 2023, and here it is, August, and the game has already arrived. That is amazing. Like such a it was just it was a campaign that was handled well. The Robert, is that his name? Robert Brian, I'm sorry, Brian Larch. Yeah, Brian just he handled everything really well, and I think that is great. It was a very positive Kickstarter experience. I also love these random generator cards. I think these are great, and you might even be able to use these in other games. I like every time you enter a tile, every time you enter a card, you get to roll up on this contents of a random dungeon. You might find things that are unoccupied with an item, a trap, a challenge, maybe some kind of a monster, a captive chained to the wall, a treasure chest, all kinds of things. When you discover a treasure, you get to roll up on this chart. When you discover a trap or a trick, you roll up there. You have different ways with those monsters who speak a language. You can parlay with them, and if you have a favorable result, you roll on this chart. If it's an unfavorable result, you roll on that chart. There are different challenges. Some of the enemies will react to fire in different ways. And I also really like this monster reaction chart because you never exactly know what the monster is going to do from one round of combat to the next. I think that is super cool. I think the bestiary is quite extensive. There are a lot of different monster cards, and so far they feel different. They have different powers, they have different abilities, and they will use different weapons. I love the art. If you ever draw one and there is a 0 appearing in that level, that means that you will not face them in that level. And so you would just discard that and draw a new one. But the monsters are interesting. I love the look of the cards. I think all of the information is laid out very cleanly, and it's fun to draw one of these monster cards in the bestiary. Moving into kind of a positive or negative, depending on how you feel about this kind of game, is it's more of a solo RPG, or it at least kind of straddles that line. So if you are, like I said at the beginning of this video, if you are more familiar with playing solo RPGs, you will feel more comfortable with Random Quest. If you are more familiar with playing board games that have very strict rules about every situation, you might run into some challenges playing Random Quest because you do have to make some rules decisions on the fly. As far as straight up negatives go, there are a lot of ambiguities in the rules. And even though this is a simple game, there are things that I did have some frustrations with. Combat is not super clear. I'm not sure how when you fight a group of enemies, if you take turns or if you go and then all of the monsters get to go. I'm not exactly sure. I also think that combat can drag on for a really long time, especially I haven't gotten to this point yet, but if you were to face off against 12 goblins with a single warrior, even if you were able to kill one goblin per round, that would still take at least 12 rounds of combat in order to overcome that combat challenge. And that's just a lot of dice rolling without a lot of interesting decisions in between those rolls. And so I found that in my first room here, I faced off against 5 goblins, and even 5 goblins took quite a bit of time going back and forth because I'm not sure if I'm able to attack in between each goblin going or if it's me and then all 5 goblins. Me, all 5 goblins. I am not sure. It's a little bit ambiguous. Another thing is the warrior class has a special ability called dual wielding. And this says that you get a dual wield. If the warrior has a melee score of 7 or higher, he or she can use 2 weapons during melee. But I'm not sure if that means you get 2 attacks or if you add the damage. Because in the glossary, when you look up dual wielding, it says basically the same thing, that the secondary weapon must be a dagger. But I'm not sure what bonus that dagger gives you. Do I get to roll damage for the dagger as well? I'm not sure. We have backpacks here that can hold 2,000 gold or 20 pounds of gear, but I can't find anywhere where anything has any kind of weight. So even on like the treasure chart here, nothing has weight. So I'm not sure if you how much gold you can hold without a backpack. There's just a lot of things like that, and I think that's kind of where it points this game being more towards a kind of a loosey-goosey RPG where you as the player and the GM just have to come up with some of this stuff. And I can see that maybe frustrating some people. So I'm happy that Random Quest exists. I'm happy that the backers were able to help Brian Larch see his game come into existence. I think that is really cool. However, there is a lot of competition in this space, especially because this kind of straddles that line between being a board game and a solo RPG. And so if you move just a little bit over into the more solo RPG realm of things, we have things like Fort Against Darkness. And so a lot of people are already highly invested in Fort Against Darkness. If you are, do you need Random Quest? I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't even know if Random Quest will be coming to retail or not. So in this part of the video, I'm also giving you some recommendations just in case it's not. If you're looking for something like this, you might also like Fort Against Darkness. One other option that you might want to take, and it would give you a very similar experience, is taking a very simple solo RPG system like Rogueland or Harper's Quest and combining that with Axebane's Deck of Many Dungeons. You will get a very similar experience, especially in the dungeon crawling portion, but you will also get probably a better set of rules to use, especially if you use something like Rogueland. Now, Rogueland isn't specifically a solo RPG, but it is very easy to use as a solo RPG. Harper's Quest 2 is specifically a solo RPG, so that might be a better fit for you depending on your experience. And then we also have, might be the kind of king of this space now, and that was the recently delivered 2d6 dungeon from Toby Lancaster. Now, I have taken a look at the preview copy of this before, but this is the complete version. We are still waiting on the bestiary cards. You don't need the cards to play. All of the information is in the back of these books here. But as far as this kind of solo RPG focusing on dungeon crawling goes, man, I think it's going to be really hard to compete with 2d6 Dungeon in this space just because of the huge the huge amount of variety in this game. So yeah, this is a crowded space. This little kind of simple dungeon crawling board game, card game / solo RPG. There are a lot of games competing for our money, our attention, and our time in this space. Does Random Quest have enough to offer to make you choose this over another, or does it have enough to offer for you to add this to your collection? I'm not sure. I can't make that decision for you, but hopefully I've given you enough information to where you can make a sound decision. So, all right, you guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed taking a look at Random Quest, the Dungeon Delve, and we will talk to you later. Bye-bye.